The UFC's return to London confirmed what we already knew, that first time out in London was fucking special, because this was fucking trash. But let's get into it. Main event of the night, the second one in a row that fails because of injury to one of the opponents. Tom Aspinall faces Curtis Blaydes in what I thought was going to be his hardest test to date. I thought Curtis Blaydes was going to wrestle fuck him, and Curtis Blaydes was landing some pretty decent shots, albeit we only saw like 30 seconds of the fight before it got called off, because I think that Tom Aspinall threw a leg kick that compromised the leg. I think that's what caused the knee to pop out of place and cause whatever injury happened. Once he stepped back, it automatically failed. Usually if it's an MCL, ACL, PCL tear, we see the actual pop. We see the muscle kind of, spasm or whatever. And this time around, that was not the case. He just immediately fell back. I thought Curtis Blaydes got the win. Unfortunately for Tom Aspinall and the people of England, that was their best shot at a title anytime soon. Hopefully there is a speedy recovery there. I found it very funny that the London crowd was kind of being chill about the whole situation, especially considering that if the fight was going to continue the way it was going, I thought Curtis Blaydes was going to make a mess of Tom Aspinall. Hopefully it's a speedy recovery. They had a picture after the fight of them sharing a beer, so they both seem in good spirits. Tough time for Tom Aspinall, especially considering his friend Darren Till just got called off this fight because of an injury. Just an overall loss for a lot of scousers. We then had the co-main event of the evening between Chris Curtis and Jack Hermansson. Jack Hermansson was fighting Chris Curtis because, again, Darren Till got injured and Chris Curtis is just fucking game. Action Man went out there trying to have a war with Jack Hermansson. Fortunately, Jack Hermansson decided to have an MMA match and did the best that he could on a last-minute replacement. He showed a lot of feints, a lot of movement, a lot of looks to Chris Curtis, who was just a little apprehensive in the first round. Jack Hermansson then in the second round convincingly won, I think having one of the better rounds in his at least last 4 performances that I can recall. And then in the third round, he was coasting to a victory, handedly beating Chris Curtis. And we have to really drive that home. He landed about like 120 shots on Chris Curtis. And I was very animated. I was very frustrated with Curtis, especially considering that he is the dude that brings it to people. But he was just a little, just a tad bit gun shy, just a little bit more respectful than he should have been of Jack Hermansson's power. And that ultimately cost him the win. He was very frustrated, but bro, you're the one that has to learn how to cut off somebody and not just chase. He did kind of apologize about his antics after the fight. I mean, Jack Hermansson even apologized to Action Man after he said fuck you, responding to him. But I was about to go off on him, and then he responded like, hey, Jack Hermansson's a really good dude. He apologized to me. He had nothing to apologize about. I lost that fight. Yeah, he lost that fight convincingly. And for anybody that thinks that Jack Hermansson was being timid or not giving him the most, yo, you gotta win the fight, and Jack Hermansson was winning that fight, showing him the looks, making him freeze, making him fight to his tempo, and eventually that cost Chris Curtis. So, good win by Jack Hermansson, especially considering that this is coming off of a loss to Sean Strickland, who fights exactly like he was fighting that night. So, I don't understand how Chris Curtis could be so upset when his homeboy fights exactly that way. And had Paddy Pimblett going out there and putting on a show for his crowd, finally, after a very, from what I hear, super boring fucking prelims. He fights Jordan Leavitt, which I think is his best challenge to date, especially in the UFC. I mean, single-handedly in the UFC, but in terms of overall appeal, I mean, one of these dudes was gonna get either twerked on or fucking teabagged. So, Paddy Pimblett goes out there, gets the job done against Jordan Leavitt, again, in his home crowd, in a crazy, like 17,000 person filled stadium, the O2. Paddy Pimblett is special. I don't know what bag he's getting now with the new UFC deal that he has, but round 2 submission for Paddy the Baddy, and he's a little legit, at least I can't hate about it. Then had Nikita Krylov doing the Lord's work or whatever against Alexander Gustafson by knocking him out in 1 minute and 7 seconds. Nikita Krylov was coming off of that, lost to Paul Craig with that fucking crazy submission out of nowhere, and Alexander Gustafson hasn't won since 2017, where he knocked out Glover Teixeira. Do I care about Alexander Gustafson? Hey, he's a nice guy. He's probably going to be the best fighter to never win a title. But, I mean, him coming back after 2 years where he just did not look good, it was just an uphill battle, and I get it. He saw Glover have a really tough fight against Yuri, and he knocked out Glover, so he's just like, man, this is the time that I can get a fucking title shot. No, it just isn't. His chin is gone. All respect to Nikita Krylov, who was going out there. He was pumped. I was almost worried that he was going to be gassing himself before the fight. There's a lot of adrenaline dump, especially when you're that hyped, and I've seen it before, and with that kind of crowd, I was like, man, what if he does? What if he puts himself over? He doesn't, and he pulls out the win. Alexander Gustafson unfortunately has to retire, man. There's just no fucking way. That chin is just fucking gone. BC said it right. It's one of those, like, once the chin is gone, it's gone. And he did take those punches before, and he just kind of pushed through it. He can't anymore. It's just, unfortunately, it should be the end for Alexander Gustafson, at least in professional MMA with the UFC, because that was tough. And if you're a fan, which I wasn't, but that has to be a tough pill to swallow. And Molly McCann does work and delivers for the London crowd. I mean, she won against Hannah Goldie, and I thought it was a very good matchup. I thought a lot of these matchups were very good for everyone. I thought it was going to be very telling to see who was going to win where. I'm not going to see, though, that she won via spinning KO. Spinning elbow kick. Like, no, Hannah Goldie was standing. Like, yeah, she ate it, but it was a TKO. It was a stoppage after the fact where, I don't know, man. No, absolutely not. But all props to Molly McCann. And Hannah Goldie is now 1-3 in her UFC career. She was 5-0 previously, and and finally we have Volkan Oezdemir just mopping the floor with Paul Craig. I mean, that was just a bad performance. And especially for somebody that was like, I'm going to make a shot to the title. He just didn't even want to exchange on feet. And whenever he was, Volkan Oezdemir was piecing him up. And then he just decided, I'm going to pull guard and just never do anything. The one thing that Juan and Ina and I had observed was Paul Craig was right there. Like, yeah, you can't kick him in the face, but you definitely can punch him. So what the fuck was he doing? But Paul Craig just loses a terrible look fight in a fight where either Paul Craig can come back from behind and just get a weird submission, or Volkan Oezdemir can fucking lose the fight. Because he's Volkan Oezdemir and he just likes to lose shit that he should win. But this time around, Volkan Oezdemir pulls off the victory over Paul Craig, and yeah, I don't know. It was just a nothing fucking fight for a nothing fucking card. But congratulations to Paddy Pimblett and Molly McCann for getting those finishes, and for all the other scousers, dude, apologies for my boy breaking your knee or breaking your boy's knee and possibly ruining any chance of a championship anytime soon. Tom Aspinall, I hope you get better, but that was pretty much UFC London, the return. Kind of a bust, but it is what it is. You can't always get a fucking banger every fucking time. In terms of when we went to go see XMMA, we'll talk about that later on this week's episode. But if you like what you heard, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing. And if you don't, leave a comment. Tell me how I'm wrong. Tell me how I'm an idiot. But either way, invest in your mental health, and fuck you, John Jones. Peace. I meant to say help, but I couldn't get it out.
Call me I know what he calls you. Call me a fatherless bastard, dude.